Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to this forum. I'm absolutely honored to be here. As the intro said, I look after business transformation and sustainability in our lubricants business. And I'm so delighted to see so many people, not only virtually, but face to face. We've had quite a history recently of not being able to gather. And I really firmly believe that it is forums like this, where we bring everybody together like this, that we can solve the challenges that we have in our industry and sectors going forward. Now, you just heard some information about technology and how people are positioning themselves in the technology space going forward. I am now going to delve into how we, as the world-leading lubricant supplier, are setting ourselves up to innovate for that resilience, that efficiency, and that sustainability. Now, being Shell, I do have to put up this standard disclaimer slide. Now, as disclaimer slides go, this is rather comprehensive. I am not even sure it's even visible from the back, but don't worry, I will not be testing you on it later. I may be tested on it later, but you won't have to be. So I'll give you a few moments to get the headlines of that, but then I'm actually going to go into the core of the speech today. And as you can see, I'm very much like Umberto. I've gone old school with my cards. So let me start with the context and challenges of the commercial road transport. Now, throughout history, this sector has innovated. This sector has evolved. When we think back to the roaring 20s, as they called it, we have had a step change in this sector since then. But this decade is the decade of real change. This decade is transformative change. We are seeing a huge, rapid increase for the desire for low-carbon solutions. And that is going to take innovation. That is going to take the collaborative forums such as this. Now, as we entered this decade, really is going to be unrecognizable for how we leave it. And that is everyone in this room and other forums around it that have to get us to that space. The world around us is changing, and quite rightly, Shell is changing too. Our energy transition strategy, the heart of it is that we will be a net zero emissions energy business by 2050. But in order to do that, we need to innovate. In order to do that, we need to partner. Many other countries, individuals, companies have also publicly committed to that net zero journey. But their pathways are not set. That result is not a given, especially in sectors such as this, commercial road, where the demand is continuing to increase. By 2050, EMEA predicts that the road transport will reach 400 million vehicles in the medium and heavy duty. Heavy duty of that alone will be 80 million vehicles. Now, currently, the heavy duty sector accounts for 25% of the emissions in road transport, but it is 1% of the fleet on the road. Now, as demand triples, fleet managers have a difficult task ahead. In a recent Frost & Sullivan survey, you can see that 70% of fleet managers have said that they are putting sustainability as a priority. That is a really difficult balance for them to strike. They're having to meet regulatory needs, lowering the emissions, getting those regulations, but they're also having to meet customer expectations, keeping their productivity and their efficiency high. That is complex. That is going to take a different approach to that which they have had till now. CO2 emissions have increased by 1.7% year on year since 1990. And currently, 33% of end CO2 emissions are due to them. This means that we have two very specific challenges ahead as an industry. How do we meet the regulations? And how do we get to that net zero future? So, on the regulatory and compliance front, governments are setting many regulations to lower the emissions and accelerate the energy transition. But the challenge, as highlighted in the European Commission piece earlier, is how do you meet that changing regulatory landscape when it changes per fleet size, vehicle class, and region? How do you meet the regulation in a sector that is quite literally on the move? Trucks carry 77% of all European freight on the road. Now, they function, as we heard earlier, as part of a much larger logistical chain as well, with inland waterways, air, rail, as we were hearing. It's incredibly complex. And I think many of you here today are consistently looking at how do you most efficiently move things from A to B. The heavy-duty sector here is just over a quarter of the emissions. And that means that we are responsible for 6% of the EU's total greenhouse emissions. So we have to curb those emissions in the future. Now, legislation standards right now are on the new trucks. And they need to lower emissions by 15% in 2025 and 30% by 2030. That means now 3 out of 4 new trucks are regulated. But in 2023, at the end of, a review was brought in, and it's being looked at to see if that needs to be increased and tightened. That talks about increasing it to 45% in 2030, 65% in 2035, and 90% by 2040. For us, that means that by 2040, under that, 98% of the emissions in road transport will be regulated. Now, that is not a target that can be reached by diesel efficiency alone. Now, as engines are redesigned and technologies improve, our lubricant technologies also have to improve. They have to evolve. Fleet companies are looking at managing so many things in this total cost of ownership. Oil drain intervals, durability, fuel efficiency. But now you have the extra elements: tailpipe emissions, life cycle emissions, and maintaining that fuel efficiency. The latest US studies show that the total cost of ownership not only is going to include lots of things that you'll see in the booths out here, aerodynamics of the trucks, improvements to automated manual transitions, but it's also going to include, and need to include, those lower viscosity fluids. Now, these reduction targets will need to be met with lubricants that lower the friction, increase fuel efficiency, and increase fuel economy. But in order to do that, and in order to be at the very beginning of this development, and in order to make sure that what we develop is fit for the future, we need to partner much more tightly with OEMs. And as we enter our 17th year as the world's leading global supplier of lubricants, that's exactly what we are doing. We are building greater partnerships with OEMs. We are building greater partnerships with fleets and fleet managers. And we are changing our partnership approach for the future. Now, reaching those first set of targets that I spoke about is possible with a very efficient diesel engine with some novel technology. But the resulting higher pressures and higher temperatures that you then get in the engine requires a completely different oil. It increases the stress on the oil. So this oil needs to act completely differently to how it has done in the past. So these specifications, these are demanding specifications. And the way that we need to meet this, and I'm going to have to say this very slowly because it is rather complicated, we need to get to a low, high temperature, high shear oil. I'll do that one again, because even for a Brit, that is a very complicated sentence. A low, high temperature, high shear oil. Now, not only saying it was a challenge, developing it was an incredibly hard challenge for us as a business. It was one where we needed to bring new innovations, new developments, new ways of thinking into our R&D practices. It had to meet incredibly tight oil drain intervals of 150,000 kilometers. That is incredibly difficult when you are working with a very thin oil. But I'm pleased to say, Shell, we don't hide away from a challenge, and we certainly didn't on this one. So we met it. In fact, we were one of the first to market with this novel technology. Rimula R7 was innovated to deal with all of the challenges that we have. So you have the efficiency challenges, where you have the low viscosity, and this oil which has to be ultra thin, dealing with all of those difficult stresses, so really managing the durability. And then we had to deal, on the durability side, engine life, higher pressures, that extra in here, the extended oil drain that I mentioned, and also limited adivation, because you need the oil to have that low friction component. The less oil you have in there, the longer and harder that oil needs to work to keep with the fuel efficiency, to keep with the fuel economy that is needed in these new areas today. Now, our Rimula R7 does that with 3 promises. Triple protection. So it controls the combustion, so it controls the corrosion from the combustion process. It reduces wear, and as you can see on some of these here, it's in the valve trains, the piston rings, and in the cylinder liners. And then what it also does is control deposits, such as the sludge formation. So that triple protection has hit all of the areas that we need to hit in order to make sure that this lubricant can perform underneath those really demanding specifications. If you want to know more about how this Rimula product and other ones reduce your total cost of ownership, manage your emissions, and also can help in the future, I am going to plug our fantastic booth, which is in the back there. So please go and talk to the Shell Ljungent team at the back. Ljungent is our official macro distributor for the Baltics, and I know they'll be absolutely delighted to talk to you. There is also very good coffee and cake if you needed any more encouragement. Another technology platform that we are incredibly proud of in Shell is our Starship platform. This is a 3rd generation now Starship truck, and it gives a real evidence of how you can decarbonize these Class 8 trucks. It's got the same innovative truck design that we've had previously, but now has a Cummins X15N natural gas engine. It's powered by Shell compressed natural gas, and it has some state-of-the-art lubricants that are specifically engineered to deal with that natural gas environment, maintaining that performance. Now, this is a material demonstration of how you have your sustainable freight ton efficiency in trucks. And it shows how that you can lower your emissions, reduce your environmental impact without compromising on performance. It has huge amounts of wonderful technical features as well, some of which you'll probably hear about in other talks whilst you're here. You know, it's got key aerodynamics, huge operational efficiencies. It has upgraded engines and transmissions. It's got solar panels. It's got special tires. But the one thing it also has is cutting-edge lubricant technology. Now, this really is, as you can see, a multidisciplinary approach to how we are dealing with the future. I mean, it's pretty sleek looking as well, right? When you look at this, first side, that is decarbonisation, existing technology now. That's phase one. For phase two, which is our business tomorrow, we need to look at alternative fuels and technology. And that, on the right-hand side, that is the one that is with the alternative fuels. That is our compressed natural gas. Now, these alternative fuels will, in time, replace diesel. But at the moment, for the workhorse of the heavy-duty sector, the internal combustion engine, it's not ready. It isn't going to be removed immediately. So, companies like mine have a huge challenge ahead. We have two worlds to serve. We have the traditional, where we have the engine oils, the gearbox oils, and the axle oils. But we also have the future in this battery electric, hydrogen fuel cell electric powertrains, zero-emission powertrains, where our technology and our fluids have to be completely different to the ones that we've engineered before. We now have, as you can see here, fluids and greases for the transmissions. We've got immersion cooling fluids in for the batteries. We have got thermal management fluids. For these, and for those areas where weight distance is less of a problem, you know, city buses, light commercial fleet, the infrastructure is starting, and it is rolling out. We've heard already about some of the plans there. But for the heavy-duty fleet, this is not yet there. And whilst we have a lack of international standards, whilst we have problems due to the size of the infrastructure, it isn't going to be there yet. So it's a journey. And a journey takes a lot of steps. As we move from the diesel as the core energy that we're used to, all the way through from the new fuels. We've got fuel economy fluids. There is digitization that you'll hear about in the other halls, going all the way through to those alternative energy sources that we discussed to get to that zero-emission CO2 freight model. It is going to take a different approach. It's going to take the innovation. I started this talk saying the 2020s is the decade of change. It has to be. I think change is exciting, but change can also be scary. And we shouldn't get disheartened by the fact that sometimes we feel change is not happening quick enough for us as a society, because change is not linear. Change can happen in a heartbeat once a critical mass is met. It will take bold decisions. It will take innovation. It will take new ways of working, like we did with our new Rimula product. It will take forums such as this. But I guess it is not the question of can we afford to innovate for sustainability, efficiency, and resilience. It is much more a question of can we afford not to. Thank you.